Peace and blessings, everyone. Welcome to Universal God Message of Peace. I'm Lale Tunser. This is Tom Shanti, who was just with us a short while ago uh, with another topic discussion. And here we have with us June Meagher, who is actually one of the charity trustees. So June has a huge, many years of experience in the well-being industry and in healing, holistic therapies, as a teacher, running businesses, charities, and she's currently in a she's also a musician, and her and Tom are both in a band called Eternal Sea, and they're doing a peace concert, so spreading the love and peace to others. So thank you, June, for joining us today. So we're going to talk today about so this topic is going to be on the topic of hypocrisy and religion, and why have you left your faith? Hypocrisy and religion. This is something that June is very passionate about, and she's going to share some of her personal journey with us. So over to you, June.
Thank you. Hi, Lally. Hi, Tom. Great to be here, and thanks for inviting me. I don't normally talk about religion, and one of the reasons for that is my grandmother and grandfather from Glasgow. One was Catholic, one was Protestant. And way back in the days when they were young, it really was taboo for a Catholic to marry a Protestant. And so when they got together, they had to move from Edinburgh to Glasgow because their families wouldn't speak to them. So my grandmother had a notice in her house saying no religion, no politics, and no football. So nobody was allowed to talk about those subjects in her house. And because I think it brought out the worst in people. So when I was born, I was christened a Catholic, baptized a Catholic, and went to a Catholic school. But my parents didn't force me to go to chapel on a Sunday. So I very seldom ever went to chapel. And I used to go now and again to maybe their Sunday school when I went on holiday. And sometimes I would go to the little friary sessions where we would sit and talk. And I think I went to them mainly, not so much for religious teachings, but mainly because they gave you orange juice and biscuits. So it seemed to be a really good place to go for that. So that was probably me being a hypocrite by going and getting that as well. So that was my upbringing. But I came from the Gorbals in Glasgow, and that was seen as a Catholic area. And across the water was Brighton, a Protestant area. And so you had all of these conflicts since I was very young, whereas you didn't speak to Protestants because you were a Catholic. That was the normal at our school. A Catholic school, you wouldn't speak to those at another school. Well, I mean, not me because I never took any notice. But, you know, the general thing was you didn't speak to people in another school. You also get taught as well at school not to like the English, and so there was all of these sort of teachings that if you were to listen to them and practice them, you would have grown up with a lot of hatred within your heart. And I really believe that by not going to the church and having the family that I did have, who, you know, would help anybody. I had a great mum and dad and great family, and they were known for helping their neighbours. They were known for helping, you know, anybody who maybe had a death in their family, didn't have enough money. If we could help, we would help. So, you know, my neighbourhood was a fantastic neighbourhood where people really helped everybody else. And religion wasn't really part of that. So when I grew up and sort of moved away, I didn't go, I came away from the Catholic Church in its entirety. I did it when I got married. I got married in a registry office. I didn't go near the chapel for that. I never went back to the chapel except for maybe other people's marriages or funerals. And I think that was brought about mainly because of what I felt was the hypocrisy in the Catholic Church. I remember speaking to one of my priests many years ago, who was a lovely, lovely man, a Father Campion, who really was a kind and very compassionate man. And I remember speaking to him as to why the Catholic Church didn't um, condone the use of contraceptives. And, you know, his explanation wasn't clear for me. And so I asked him then, why did the Vatican have shares in Roche, one of the manufacturers of the pills? And he couldn't really answer that. So that was to me where the hypocrisy sort of, the thoughts on hypocrisy within the church started for me. It also started for me when, you know, when I was back in my neighbourhood with Catholics and Protestants, you know, I had a lot of friends who were Protestants and a lot of family members who were Protestants. So I couldn't see how these people were evil. Um, and I don't think that was so much the teaching of the church as to teaching of the people in the church. So there was a big difference there. And then going through into when, you know, I'd left school and going through, and then when, you know, social media has been great in revealing some of the hypocrisies in the church, where if we look at, say, for example, the Boston Archdiocese, where many of the priests were paedophiles, and, you know, the hierarchy knew about it, the main leaders knew about it, but they did nothing about it. It was only due to one of the Boston newspapers revealing that it was brought to light and something then was done about it. But I think this was systemic right through the Catholic religion, whereby priests who were found out to be paedophiles, rather than be, you know, put through the court system, they were moved to another parish, often to continue doing what they were doing in the previous parish, but also they were then moved, you know, into maybe retirement homes if they were really ill. They really did wash all of this under the carpet. And so I found that really hypocritical. I also found hypocritical, you know, the confession system in the Catholic Church, whereby you could go and confess your sins and then you would be absolved of all of those sins, and then you could go and commit them again the following week and go back and get, you know, get them absolved again. So I didn't see the reason why we could, you know, have a system whereby you weren't looking at your sins and weren't looking at why you committed them, etc., etc. It was just absolve, absolve, absolve. So that was some of the reasons why I left the sort of faith behind. I just didn't like the hypocrisy in it. I know that the teachings of the Bible, particularly Jesus and Matthew, were to look at hypocrisy and be critical of hypocrisy within, you know, the Bible itself. I really believe that many of the teachings left it wide open for people to become hypocrites. So I didn't agree with that. And if you look through the history of the Catholic Church, and I talk about the Catholic Church in particular because that's where I was brought up, was you look at the Crusades, you look at the Inquisitions, you look at all of these areas where millions, and we're talking millions of people were tortured, murdered, raped, pillaged, all of that in the name of religion. And I really believe that if Jesus was to come back now and he would look at what's happened in his name, that he would be absolutely disgusted. So to me, that's where I feel religion has let down the teachings, the true teachings of Jesus.
Oh, wow,
So
amazing. Thank you so, so much for sharing your story with us, June. And I can really I understand, some of the points you've mentioned. I think it happens in all, organized religion actually. Many, sects and groups within those religions as well. Tom, do you have any questions for June?
Um, well, I was just looking at a quote actually. I'll just briefly share with you because, like June was saying about Jesus would be quite disgusted or quite upset if he saw all the hypocrisy that's gone on in his name. And I came across this actually. Jesus tried to warn us about this during his ministry. In fact, he came to tear down such distorted views, not to add to them. In fact, I heard one vicar say that Jesus came to do away with religion. That was a C of E vicar on a video that I saw once. But he told us that spirit is a personal thing, that it has nothing to do with public opinion or respectability. In fact, he said, and this is all in capital letters, beware of the scribes who desire to walk in fancy clothes and love greetings in the markets and the highest seats in the churches and the chief room at feasts, who devour widows' houses, which means take their money, and for a show make long prayers. So,
I know, amazing.
so Jesus really was all about authenticity and not,
Yeah,
becoming hypocritical and
definitely.
up and using the religion for your own ends, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that as well when I read the parables of Jesus, peace be upon him.
Mm.
I see so much wisdom and
Mm.
all the values of forgiveness, gratitude, kindness, taking responsibility for your actions, um, and treating others how you want to be treated. Charity, what did he say? Give everything you have to the
Mm.
poor and follow me. But
Yeah.
then when you see in the church, all the gold and this and that, then obviously that's another, I think, thing
Mm.
that puts people off sometimes. Um, so I think this happens in all religions, really. The same. I'm a Muslim, and I see this happening in the different within the different sects. In the Quran it says, "Do not divide yourselves into sects," but then we see all these different sects of Islam and Sunni and Shia, and they fight each other, and each side thinks that they're right and the other's wrong, and we see hypocrisy, and it really saddens me because I believe that faith, like for me, faith has been a healer, the biggest healer, to believe. Because when we believe, we believe in something higher than ourselves, our own understanding, then we believe in our own potential as a human being. And it helps us to get up when we fall and when we make mistakes and to always strive to be better versions of ourselves. So I see that it's a big blessing, to be able to believe. But unfortunately, because of all this stuff happening in the name of religion and people, doing bad things in the name of God or in the name of this religion or that religion, I understand why people are turning away from, that faith. And I think sometimes ignorance can also fuel this, ignorance about the teachings of your own religion and also ignorance from the other side. Then you get hate crimes as well. So you see somebody doing something in the name of religion, and then you assume that all people under that label are bad, and then you get hate crimes against that group of people. And we see that happening all around the world, with ISIS, people cutting people's heads off in the name of Islam, and then everyone assumes that that's what Islam is, and then you get hate crimes against Muslims. The same about, what's happening at the moment with Israel and, anti-Semitism and that type of thing. So it happens a lot, and it is a shame, really. But June, you've obviously, looked into it, and the teachings of Christianity, as in the teachings of, the teachings of Jesus, peace be upon him, and the the true message of Christ, how beautiful it is. And I see so many Christians around that don't hold that label of being a Christian because they practice kindness and forgiveness and gratitude and respect and humility and patience, and all those lovely values of being a
I
human
think
being.
that's very, very important. I couldn't understand when I was a younger woman, when I looked at apartheid in South Africa. I thought that was so, so horrendous. And I remember Bishop Desmond Tutu, trying to talk. And I couldn't understand these leaders who were all going to church and seemed to be going to church, condoning apartheid. And even in this country, I was just like, this is just horrendous. And I remember, standing in many of the vigils outside the South African embassy, protesting against apartheid. And I just thought it was truly evil, and I couldn't understand why people could get away with this in so-called 20th century, 21st century. I just couldn't believe that this sort of hatred was still going on and still goes on today. Apartheid has gone, but there's still segregation in South Africa. There's still segregation in the southern states of America, which I've seen firsthand. So this hatred is still within people, and who is teaching these people this hatred? Is it their parents? Is it their teachers? When I was a young girl, and I can only speak from my own experience, I had a teacher that hated the English, and so, if I hadn't have had family who were English, I might have left, hating English too. I didn't, but it would have been easy for me to do that if I hadn't had parents who taught me different. So you've
Yeah.
got to go as, who is the source of this hatred, and why do they practice? Because I really believe, and I believed this for some time, that no parent on this planet brings a child in to this planet to be abused or murdered or killed or fight in a war, regardless of which side you're on. No parent would bring a child in to be killed like that. And so if every, and I have many Muslim friends, many Sikh friends, many Hindu friends, many friends from, all sorts of walks of life, and all religions and all non-religions as such. And they're all really lovely people. I go to their houses, I'm treated as, one of the family. They come to mine, I treat them as one of the family. So if all of us can get along, then, why isn't that happening on a global basis? And I really believe that, power and authority corrupts. It really does corrupt. And, I also believe then that in this corruption, government figures, major corporations, they love for people to fight against each other, because while they're all fighting against each other, they're not questioning the corruption and hypocrisy that's going on at top level. It's as simple as that, in my view.
Definitely. It's similar to what we were talking, Tom Shanti was teaching us from the Buddhist perspective, and how sometimes what happens is, the more you get in, with religion, it's a tool for, getting from A to B perhaps. And when you get to B, it's easy for it to go to your head. And you might think, oh, that's it, I've reached a state of, there's a power which comes with that. And unfortunately, sometimes people can abuse that power for their own benefit. And and I think that's what happens sometimes, isn't it? People in the authority who reach a position of authority, they might have started off with good intentions, and we see this in politics. Someone saying, if I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be just, I'm going to serve the people. And then when they get there, you know, it's one lie leads to another, and then it ends up changing you. And so the question is, how can our religious leaders prevent themselves from doing this? Is there are there any practical things that you would recommend, or Tom, to help us avoid that state, that
I think stop lying.
Mm-hmm.
Stop lying to themselves as well. But basically stop lying, admit,
When you make a
take
mistake.
responsibility for it,
Mm-hmm.
and then be seen to be creating some sort of justice. You know, for a lot of people, you know, who were abused by the Catholic Church, they want justice. They want these priests or nuns or whoever was responsible, laymen, to be prosecuted. They want them held to account. And I think that's correct. You know, the same goes for politicians and everything. You know, we have got these war crime acts in place, but nobody seems to ever get, you know, done these days for committing war crimes, regardless of what side they're on. You know, I'm seeing the horrors unfold at the moment on the news. I mean, absolutely horrendous. No child should suffer, especially not in the name of religion. No person should suffer, because I'm really 100% positive that Muhammad, peace be upon him, Jesus, Abraham, and all of them, Jesus in particular, this would have been the last thing they would have wanted to see for the children of God. And for those three religions, the Jewish religion, the Christian religion, and the Muslim religion, it's the same God. So it's really difficult for me to understand, why is there so many wars if we're all following the same God? Different prophets, same God. Why is there so much hatred and anger? If the teachings are all very similar, why is there so much pain and suffering caused to the followers of those religions simply because they choose? You know, why is the Jews and the Muslims at war, the Muslims and the Christians, why are they all at war if their teachings is all about peace, love and compassion? I really fail to understand. I have tried to understand, I cannot. And the only thing I can understand is that it's power, and that power has corrupted these people, the leaders, whether it's the priests, the Pope, the imams, the rabbis. If they're teaching hatred in whatever way, shape, or form because they think it's right, then they shouldn't be in that position, and they should be held accountable, and they should be sacked or put over to receive justice.
Perfectly said, June. Thank you. I think, Tom, you put your hand up. Do you have an answer to June's question?
Not entirely, but we did touch on this in the previous talk, didn't we? When I was saying that, from my perspective, from the Vedic religions, or spiritual paths like Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and Sikhism, there's a belief in karma, the law of karma, and also in reincarnation. So past and future lives. Now, when you take those away, I know they're there in a certain form. Certainly, like Jesus said, do as you would have done to yourself, etc. But I think the problem that's causing a lot of these wars and violence over the centuries is that there's this idea that if you're wrong, you're going to hell forever, not just for a while. It's an eternal damnation. Now, that is extremely frightening. Now, anybody that has a slightly different perspective that threatens the basis of your belief system is a threat. It's not only a threat to you in this life, it's a threat to your eternal afterlife. And that is very, very threatening and frightening. And from fear comes a lot of violence. And we've got to suppress the others because they're teaching a slightly different message, which is in contrast or even in conflict with our belief system. Whereas in Buddhism, we try not to cling to beliefs. We have beliefs, we believe in reincarnation, but we don't know. But even if it's not true, it's a very beneficial belief system, because whatever you do to anybody else, it's going to come back to you either in this life or in the next life.
Yeah, I mean, that teaching is actually very similar in the Abrahamic faith as well. The
Yes, yeah,
eternal damnation, I think it's sort of exaggerated a little bit, actually. There's not much, I think I'm not saying it doesn't exist within the teachings, but the concept of hell is not necessarily an eternal thing. And actually,
by
even the
the
reincarnation,
politicians and Kosh to
yeah.
sort of keep people in line, like June was saying, the people in authority are threatening the people they're meant to be serving, in order to maintain their power base. And they're using the religious teachings to scare
Yeah.
people.
Yes, and I think that happens. People twist, they take one verse out of the whole book and don't use it in the context that it's meant to be in, and they ignore all the other verses and they use it to suit their own purposes, to sort of and it can get political. So if you bring religion into the, and if the politics is about, making more money or something, then actually you can use religion as a powerful tool to do that. And unfortunately, that can be really, really dangerous. And if we're not encouraging, you know, people at mosques and synagogues and at churches, if we're not encouraging them to seek truth themselves, to read themselves in a language that they understand. So, we get sometimes imams advising people to learn Arabic and to read the Quran in Arabic, even if they don't understand what it means. And that is, they get more reward for that than reading it in their own language, which they understand. And also, we've got other people who sometimes say, you're not fit enough to understand yourself, so you've got to come to us. So they put themselves in between, that person and, the creator, if that, that, and that can be dangerous too, because then you're stopping people from learning, and they don't want to lose their position. So, and that can then be very dangerous, can't it? I think the more we encourage people to seek truth themselves and try to be a guide and a good role model as much as possible, practice what we preach. And like June, what you said, I think it's so important, if we make mistakes, because we're all human and we all make mistakes, none of us are perfect, to actually admit and say, I should have done this better, or I'll learn from this. And actually, because that is part of being a role model, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's where the confessional sort of system in the Catholic Church falls down, because it absolves you of these sins and then you're free to go and commit them again. There's no learning process in that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that to me is just absolutely crazy. I'm not saying that people can't be forgiven. I'm not saying that, but to forgive and then for it to be recurring. So, for example, somebody might go to the church and say, I hit my wife or something like that, and then okay, you're forgiven, and then go back and do the same thing the following week, etc. That's not acceptable. It really isn't, and I really cannot believe how the Catholic Church turned its back on the Jewish community when they were being murdered during with the Germans during the Second World War, when people went to the church in Rome for help. They could have helped a lot more people. I think they helped a few people, but not nearly as much as what they could have. And the condemnation at the time was very little. And I thought that was really awful. And when you look, what is hypocrisy? It's pretending to be what you're not, so how can these church leaders as such say they're leaders when they're supporting regimes that make nuclear bombs, when they're supporting companies that make arms, that go away and kill, children and innocent people. I just don't understand how they can sit back and allow this to happen, you know, and not be seen to be doing anything. It's okay to say, oh, we condemn it, but where's the action behind that? If you've got authority, where's your action behind, you know, your words when you come to condemn
It's
people?
such a dangerous place, isn't it? If you've been given an authority and a responsibility to guide people to be better, you know, better versions of themselves and to spirituality and faith, it's so, so important to actually try our best to practice what we preach. Otherwise, the power of the message is lost and we're defiling the name of God, you know, and that the impact that has on all those people who look up to you as a role model is huge. And I think I'm speaking to myself, I'm speaking to, you know, every single one of us is can be a leader and a role model for other people. So I think we can all try our best to not be hypocrites. And actually I think that's the ultimate aim, is to try to get ourselves to a point where we know who, you know, we know what our values are, what we believe, what our understanding of truth is. It might keep changing as we, you know, become more enlightened, but actually what are we doing to be true to ourselves every single day? Are we speaking the truth we believe? Are we behaving according to our words? Are we practicing what we preach? Are we fulfilling our promises? Are we fulfilling our commitments? When we say something, are we telling the truth? And are we doing it? These are all things which, you know, we're witnesses to ourselves. And um you know, we don't know other people's hearts. You know, it's good to make excuses for other people and try to see good in others. And actually, even in the religious, you know, leaders and all the politicians, I think what they're doing is really difficult. All the responsibility they have, it must be so hard. I personally would not want to be in that position because I'm afraid that I would get corrupted and I would fall, and I would, you know, it's a very difficult job, and they've taken that on. And maybe their intention is good, maybe they're just, you know, surrounded by all of this corruption, and they, you know, it's good to make excuses, people. I think we can hold ourselves accountable and try our best ourselves to be good role models and share, you know, and do that as much as we can. But
And I think that's really important, Lally. I think, you know, if you've not got that level of authority, then it's easy not to become too corrupted. We're all hypocrites. We can all be hypocrites, you know, and we can say one thing and do another, and think one thing and do another, and hope, you know, we hope we live good lives. We hope that we cause as little harm. Um, you know, and then when people wrong us, we try our best not to retaliate or get angry. We try and understand, we try and forgive. You know, sometimes it's not easy, and sometimes you have to cut cords and let people go out of your life, simply because it's not good for you as a person to keep that person in your life any longer. But I think when you're a government and you can see things that are wrong, really, really wrong, then for you to continue and allow that wrong to continue as well, I think that's probably about one of the saddest things on earth, really, is when people, you know, allow other governments and that, you know, and who knows what a really good government is as such. But I think when people use religion as a weapon, I think that's probably one of the saddest things at all, because, you know, if you look at the teachings of the prophets, it was all about peace, love, and compassion. You know, it wasn't about greed
others, yeah.
and, you know, war and attack other peoples for having a different opinion on the same sort of lifestyle. You know, it wasn't about, you know, whether you were male, female, or there was, you know, nowadays there seems to be homophobia. There's, you know, a couple of 100 years ago it was witches and women who were getting murdered, and you know, so this sort of hypocrisy has went right through the millenniums, since sort of the days of Jesus on this earth. And I think, I always had a sort of vision of, of a sort of campfire where you had the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Jesus, Abraham, and some of the other religious teachers, such as the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, who wrote some incredible words, and his teachings are absolutely phenomenal. I went to his museum in Atlanta, and I never had read quite much about his teachings until I got to his museum, and it really opened my eyes. His teachings were absolutely phenomenal. And I mean, I had this sort of vision of all them coming together, and having this sort of powwow around the campfire and talking about what have these people done in our names? What have these people done to our core teachings? And I really, it really is quite upsetting to see what has been done in their names. Really. I just find the whole thing really hypocritical. And that's why I don't go back to church. In fact, I went back for a funeral to the Catholic Church just recently, just over a month or so ago. And one of the songs they were singing was Faith of Our Fathers. And, the words were about going to war and how to get your children. And I was like, wow. I mean, you're told this from a very early age, and if you're taught about Protestants and then, the English and then the Jews and then the Muslims and then, anybody else that doesn't fit in with their teachings, then I think it's really evil.
I think any organized religion which teaches hatred is going against the core principles and foundation of their faith, because actually all these beautiful religions, if we look into it and read the books, it's all about love and loving God with all your heart, mind, and strength, and actually loving your neighbors, yourself, and treating each other with justice, treating each other how you want to be treated. In that, when I say that, I mean sort of with the same kindness, respect, patience, forgiveness, appreciation, all those beautiful attributes. The way that we want people to talk to us, we should talk to others. The way that we want to be treated with fairness, we should treat others with fairness. Let's put ourselves in the other's perspective. If there's hatred, then we're doing something wrong. Because hatred just divides us. And actually, the teachings of these religions is all about unity and oneness, that we all come from the same place, we all go to the same place, we're all one soul. So why can't we all just find that common ground and put down our weapons and,
Yeah, I don't think there's much profit in it, to be honest, but I'll give you a couple of insights. Tom and I were taking a walk along a canal not far from Glasgow, and there was a little shrine. I mean, there was nothing on the shrine to say what it was a shrine for, but anyway, there was a chap coming towards us, and we said to him, "Do you know anything about this shrine?" And he went, "Yeah, it's a shrine to the Catholic miners who lived in the area." I went, "Oh," I says, "oh, well, that's nice." I says, "They built a little shrine." He says, "Yeah, what happened was they brought in all of these Irish immigrants, Catholic and Protestants. They built two villages, one a Catholic village, one a Protestant village, and kept the war within each of them going. So whilst the Protestant village was in arms against the Catholic village and vice versa, they weren't fighting the miners, leaders and owners, the mine owners. They weren't uniting and, complaining about conditions in the mines for workers. They weren't complaining about the poor condition, appalling wages, etc. So that was one instance, and I thought, my goodness, that was what was happening. So I was grateful for that man for sharing that with me. And then, other instances of that as well is where I came from in Glasgow, where people would ask you who you support, what football team you supported, to get an idea of what religion you might be.
Oh, I
And
see.
then, based on that religion would be whether you got a job or not in certain industries. And another occasion just recently was Tom and I went over to Belfast for the day, and never been to Belfast before. So we took the big red bus tour around Belfast, because I thought, well, that's the best way to see a city and learn about it. And we took 2 tours, and it was just amazing. The first driver of the first bus was an old soldier during the Troubles in Ireland. I call it the war in Ireland because that's exactly what it was. The Troubles seemed to make it seem less nasty than what it actually was. Anyway, we took the trouble. We stopped at the peace wall, and there was millions of signatures on this wall. The wall went on, the full length of a street, and obviously we signed it. And this driver, from his perspective as a soldier during the war, was talking about it. And then we went on another bus, and this other driver, and he was telling us about it, and he, was showing us all the murals and everything else. And, and even to this day, they still close the gates at night on the different religions, which I never knew was happening, and I thought that was awful. And we got to talking to quite a few people who came from Belfast and talked about the times of the Troubles, and I just thought it was really, really sad, because I thought the kids today in Belfast are passing these murals, from both religions, Catholic and Protestant. They're still seeing this, they're still reminded daily. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if pulling all of these murals down, destroying, flattening that area and starting afresh would maybe be helpful, or just seeing the murals and saying, well, look, these are the people that died for either the IRA or the UDF or whoever was involved. It's beyond me, but I felt sorry for the children who would have to live and see these things, because they're the innocents in all of this. As with any war, they really are the innocents. And if anybody can go to their bed and sleep at night having made money for bombs and hand grenades and anything else and sleep okay, I wonder how, because all I can see when you look at the news and see these little faces sort of terrified, and parents wondering whether their houses are going to get blown up. Can they sleep? Are they going to have enough food? These refugee camps full of millions of people who only by unfortunate set of circumstances born in a country where there's war. I mean, it can come to the UK. We're very, very fortunate here. I'm so lucky, so blessed not to have been involved in a war on this soil, but that can change in a moment. So my heart goes out to any parent and child at the moment who's suffering in the name of a religion where the leaders aren't accountable for their actions.
My heart goes out to them as well, June. It's so sad. It's really sad, the state that humanity's fallen to, really.
Yeah, well, that was one of the reasons I chose not to have children. Because when I was a young woman in the 70s, it was all about, I joined CND, I joined various peace associations, etc., etc. There was a nuclear threat, and I didn't want any descendants of mine ever having to sit and worry whether there was going to be a nuclear bomb on their head or not. So I decided then that I would never have children. And I still glad I did, because in all of the years, they've had 40 years or 50 years to get it right, and there's still that threat. And I think that's truly evil.
I think since probably the start of, the world, there's always been war, hasn't there? But there probably always will be until the end. But I understand your point, and it's living in that fear really for your children, and I mean, you are a mother anyway to so many people, like in so many different ways. You've taught thousands and thousands of people and planted so many seeds of love in the hearts of others, June. So um you'll always be that mother figure. And I think love is, I think love is the cure.
I think things are changing. I think with the social media, it's, people are getting more enlightened much quicker. I mean, younger people in their 20s are far more advanced than I'd ever be now. There's still a platform for hatred and things like that, but I think in general, I go to a few festivals, and I see the young people, and I see their ideas, I see what they're doing, I see, what they're creating in the world, and I think, wow, these people are fantastic. They really are brilliant. It's just a shame that we still have these leaders who feel war is the only way forward, or war is the only thing that makes profit. I really believe that peace could make 10 times more profit than war ever could.
Definitely. Yeah. And we'll never reach that state of inner peace if we carry on the way we are, really.
Well, I think it's achievable. There's a lot of people now coming away from all of it, and not bothering with any of the religions, or maybe looking at other sort of belief systems, such as Buddhism, path of life. I've studied those as well, not in any way near the level that Tom has and other people, but the qualities are all the same in all of the religions. Be kind, be grateful, be compassionate, be forgiving, etc., etc.
And we need to see, I reckon.
Yeah. And I was out. I went to Tom and I went to this fabulous wee church in.
Is Tom your partner? For those watching, Tom your partner.
Yeah. And we went to this little church in Carmarthen, near Carmarthen, just recently, and where there was housed these prehistoric stones. And we met a chap there, and he'd married a Buddhist lady. And he says, my goodness, my life has changed so much since I married this Buddhist lady. I says, oh yeah. And in what way? And he went like, he says, well, he says, we say, she says to our kids, if anybody says bad things, stay away from them. If anybody's not nice, stay away from them. But if you can help somebody, you help them. So they were very simple prophecy and very simple teachings. But I thought that was quite gentle. He says, there's no nastiness, there's no this. He says, my life has changed. There's no hatred. My life has changed enormously. And I think if the leaders of these different religions were to teach that,
then people would come back to their religion. They wouldn't lose their faith, go away from it, I reckon. Definitely.
If they were to do that and practice what they preach, and hold accountable the corrupt politicians, the corrupt religious leaders, that, if people were to hold these people into account, then I think people would start to believe and go back. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it's too late for a lot of people. But I think if they were to hold these people into account, then yeah. But the law seems to cover up for them. And actually, the law seems to be just as corrupt, really.
Also, I think human beings always let us down. We can't expect to be saved by somebody else. So if for those in those religions as well who look up to these leaders as sort of gods, perhaps we need to think, well, actually, can they save me? They're a human being. They can't be there for me every time I need them. I need to look within myself, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Let's not
And
rely on our leaders to save us, because actually, you know,
Mhm.
nothing really, it's within ourselves, isn't it? That's my understanding. But Tom had a question, I think. You're putting your hand up, Tom.
Yeah, I
Did you?
was just thinking in the Tao Te Ching, the Taoist text, it talks about the great leader leads from the back. And also it says, if you overesteem great men, people become powerless. So you can
Yeah.
see this throughout history. We're putting certain leaders on a pedestal that is very unhealthy. And then that means the masses become powerless. So for as long as we're worshipping one man or this great being that's going to save us, um, we are powerless as people.
Exactly. I think the leaders should be down on the same level with the people. And actually, they should not be paid more money than anybody else. They should not be paid more money than a dustbin man
Yeah.
or lollipop lady, because actually that's like saying that their job is better than someone else, and that that's just their role. But we all play our role, and everybody's important. And otherwise people go into that for different reasons. They go into it for money because they will, be rewarded for being the leader figure, when actually, let's see who wants to be the leader. If you have to live in a council house and on benefits and with minimum wage, would you still want that position? Would you want to be the prime minister if you had to live like that? And if not, then why aren't you doing something? Why don't we do something about it? Let's bring more justice to our societies, really, I think.
I think there's a few politicians live in council houses, and there's nothing wrong with that, because that was the only houses there were for many years for people. There was no option for them to buy a house. That has changed over the last 60, 70 years, remarkably so. I think it's about politicians. No, they belong to a particular party and they have to toe the party line or they'll get ostracized from the party. I think that's where where a lot of the corruption starts, because they choose to turn a blind eye. And it's the same in businesses as well. If you've got, management, it used to be when I was a young lady, a young woman, that the nastier a manager was, the more promotion they got. The tougher a person was, and I could never understand that. I felt that if you were a good manager and understood and tried to be, communicate with the staff, etc., a lot of other people wouldn't agree with that. Or if you reported someone for being, say, for example, a paedophile, other members of staff wouldn't talk to you because they couldn't believe it or whatever. It's just,
What we
the
value.
hypocrisy goes right through, from management right through, to into people's houses. But I think we've got to hold ourselves accountable for our actions. And as I say, I can be up there with the best of hypocrites at times, Um, but I would like to think that if somebody came for me for help, then I would be very happy to try and offer that help. And I would like to think the church will, especially in the Catholic Church, will now begin to take accountability, hold all of those priests and nuns and laymen to account, charge them, get them charged with the police or put them through the police system. Don't simply put them into retirement homes and let them uh, retire without facing any consequences, because they really, really did some atrocious things to people, whether it was stealing their babies off them, whether it was, raping people, male or female. That they should be held accountable for that. And when people see that, then people will maybe start to respect the Catholic Church again. But at the moment, I personally wouldn't ever think of going back into the Catholic religion, simply because I don't think the values they want me to hold are the values the management hold as such.
And you can still hold on to those values without
Oh, of
labeling
course.
yourself with a religion or,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I do. You know,
exactly.
I will still help
You're an
people. I will
amazing
still do this.
representative of, what it is to be a good human being. From, I know you well, and you always try and help people, and you give without expectation. You just want to see people shine their light and be happy, and that's what makes you happy, and their success is your success. I mean, you're great. You hold on to those Christian values, the
Yeah,
teaching of Jesus.
yeah.
I would say from my understanding, you're, a great example of what it is to be a follower of Christ. And and if more of those who call themselves Christians would see you as an example, I think, less people would leave the Christian faith, and there'd be a lot less bloodshed shed in the name of Jesus and in the name of
Oh, well, as you say, I think they say there's no profit in peace, only in war and the war machine. And
think, yeah.
that's really, really sad.
Sometimes people make money their God. Let's think of what actually success means to us. What do we value? What do we choose to value? Do we value, gold and silver, or do we choose to value knowledge, wisdom, understanding, compassion, the attributes of kindness and respect? Whatever we choose to value is what we're going to strive for. And with everything, social media can be used to cause harm, or it can be used, hopefully what we're doing today to spread love and peace, and everything can be used for good and bad.
There's beauty all around us. There always is beauty all around us, in people, in neighbours, in friends, in family. You'll get conflict as well. I try my best, personally speaking, to do good, but I'm not the easiest person in the world to work with, live with, or anything like that. So, I've had my
Well,
fair
how about
share
you?
of falling outs with people, and you could ask 10 people what they think of me, you'll get 10 different opinions based on how they know me. But in my heart, I'd like to think that I would help people rather than harm them. That's what I would prefer to be. None of us know what we would do under extenuating circumstances, and none of us know how we would behave if, we were put in circumstances that, we would normally abhor. But I think there's great good in people and in humanity. And if we can
Okay.
just get rid of the corrupt politicians and the corrupt companies that are out to control, power and authority really does corrupt, and it really makes slaves of children and people. Not only slaves in terms of they get paid pittances for work and etc. For example, you see children in Africa going doing mines now. Well, it was only 150 years ago that children in this country went down mines. In fact, about 100 years ago, that young people in this country went down mines, and that there was still sort of slavery as such. The companies that created this, they moved out of Britain as soon as the laws came in, and they went to other countries where the laws were less. So we should have a sort of global law system where no child should be a slave or put forced to work under a certain age, where everybody is allowed to have education, where everybody's allowed to, a home and a safe environment to live.
global law system. Wow, let's finish on that note and hold on to that. And perhaps next time we can talk about what that would look like. Um,
Yeah,
June, what's that song that you're singing? There are good people doing good things all over the world. That's
yeah.
a really, really positive one to end on. I think if you can just sing one line of that for us, that'd be great.
Yeah. So this came about. We went to a festival recently. We were singing a song. We watched a couple singing songs. Great music, great musicians, but they're talking about a lot of the bad things that were happening in the world. And I thought, do you know, there's a lot of great things out here in the world that are happening. So we put together a little sort of chant saying people are doing great things around the world. So it came something like this. People are doing great things around the world. People are doing great things around the world. People are doing great things. People are doing great things. People are doing great things around the world. Now, and
thank
they are, and they
you.
will continue to do it. And
Yeah,
it's them that should shine.
positive.
Yeah.
And amen. God bless you both. Peace be with you. Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom. Peace and blessings, everybody. Thank you for watching. And if you like this or if you found it helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. And hopefully there'll be a lot more to come. Okay. Take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye bye.